Okay, so on Friday the 17th of November, we finally got the Doctor Who Children in Need sketch that we were promised, which some people have dubbed Destination Skaro. I don't know if that's really the official name of the sketch. I know Russell said Destination Skaro in one of his Instagram captions, but for me personally, it didn't look like he was trying to say that that was the title of this sketch, but people have just kind of ran with that, and I quite like the name of it, so I think that is what people are going to refer to it as in the future, and I don't mind that because I think it is quite a cool title. But yeah, in this video, I just kind of want to discuss my thoughts on this sketch, what I think about it, whether I liked it or not, and just some general discussions about other more specific topics about this sketch and some slightly controversial things that I don't want to get too deep into, but I do have things to say on it, you know, about Davros and stuff like that. And I also want to talk a little bit about Unleashed as well. Before this sketch aired, people had basically kind of figured out the plot. At least some people I'd seen on like Twitter and stuff had basically figured out what the plot was going to be like, because they could tell it was going to be set like probably before Genesis of the Daleks because of the uniforms and stuff. They could tell it was maybe going to be about the Dalek plunger because the Dalek you can see in the promo image doesn't have its plunger on. And so people kind of figured out that was kind of probably what it was going to be. And so because of that, I was kind of hoping for a little bit more than that, but there wasn't really much more to it than that, besides obviously Davros showing up. But even with that being said, I still liked it, even having figured out basically what it was going to be before it aired. Now, I think some people are taking this a little bit too seriously, and I'm not even talking about the Davros stuff right now, I just mean the sketch in general. Some people were quite disappointed by it, as if this isn't just a Children in Need sketch, which I think is a little bit weird. I know Russell did kind of say in his Instagram caption, you know, this isn't a comedy sketch or whatever, a comedy skit before it aired, which I do feel like it was a little bit weird that he said that, but I don't know, I feel like he was meant to just be kind of joking in some way when he said that, or kind of indicating that it wasn't going to be like the Doctor meeting Pudsey Bear or something like that. But yeah, I do think it was a little bit weird that he said that, and that did kind of affect some people's expectations. But at the end of the day, I still don't know what people are expecting. It's a Children in Need sketch. You shouldn't have had your hopes up too high really for it and thought that it was going to be some really serious thing or something like that. And then I've also seen some people saying that they think this is like an indication of what the whole of the next era is going to be like, and kind of reflects the new era as a whole, and this is the introduction to the new era, which I think is just an insane thing to say, because it's a Children in Need sketch. It's not like the first special of the 60th anniversary or like the first episode of the new era. If you're taking this as an indication of what the next era is going to be like, or the introduction of the new era, I think that's honestly an insane thing to do, because this is a Children in Need sketch. Yes, it happens to be like the first filmed thing that we see with the 14th Doctor, besides its regeneration scene, and like the first filmed thing of the new era, I guess. But that's only because Children in Need happened to come out before the 60th anniversary special started airing, like, and they just wanted to be part of it. If Children in Need aired like the week after the specials, Doctor Who would have still been part of it, and it probably would have still been like the same sort of thing. So if you're taking this as an indication of what the new era is going to be like as a whole, I do think that is like a bit of an insane thing to do, because at the end of the day, it is just like a little funny Children in Need sketch. That's all it is. Like, don't take it too seriously. Okay, so after seeing this nice visual effects shot of the TARDIS kind of flying towards Skaro at the start of the sketch, we then immediately are greeted to Julian Bleach walking in as Davros, which I thought was very cool to see, very unexpected. I did not expect Davros to be in this. I know before it aired, a lot of people were saying they think, oh, maybe we're going to see Davros, and I was thinking, I don't think we are. I think some people were even saying Moan could have been Davros, or saying that he could have been Nyder, and I was like, I don't think that's the case. Moan is definitely just playing a new original character, which was the case. He was playing Castavillian, which is a really funny name, but it was an original character. But I expected it to just be him and David Tennant in it. I didn't think we'd be seeing anybody else. So it was nice to see Julian Bleach return as Davros, and in a different form to how we normally see him, because this is Davros kind of pre-accident, just looking like Julian Bleach with maybe like a little bit of makeup on, instead of how we normally see him, which I thought was really cool. Now, obviously, people have had a lot of things to say about Davros in this. For me, just for this sketch on its own, it makes a lot of sense, because this is pre-Genesis of the Daleks. I know in some people's version of canon that doesn't quite work out, because in some novelizations for Genesis or some expanded media stuff, you know, by this point Davros should already be in the chair or whatever. But we always know the Doctor Who canon is not always set in stone. It changes all the time, and at the end of the day, the way I always think about it is whatever's televised, if it contradicts something from like Expanded Universe or Big Finish or whatever, that trumps whatever the canon was before, because, you know, it's the main show. This is a little bit different because it's Children in Need sketch, but I feel like it's meant to kind of be canon to the main show, because because it's got the same actors in it and stuff. But like I say, Doctor Who canon changes all the time, so I don't think you should be that annoyed by that if the timeline is slightly wrong. But obviously, the main problem a lot of people seem to have with this is the comments RTD made in Doctor Who Unleashed, basically saying that this is how we're going to see Davros from now on because of the whole trope of villain characters often being portrayed as disabled, which obviously is not a good trope. And so I have to say I do agree with Russell on this, and ultimately I do feel like it is the right decision to make. Like I said earlier, it makes sense in this story anyway because it's pre-Genesis of the Daleks, so we can just say, you know, this is before he had the accident, before his like lab explosion or whatever it was that caused him to look like that. So it makes sense for this story, but it will be interesting to see maybe how they work around this in the future. If they even do, they might not even bring him back after this. Maybe that's what Russell meant, is like this is his last appearance and this is how he wants him to be seen. But maybe he will come back. Maybe there'll be more pre-Genesis stories where he looks like this, or you know, maybe in the future they'll just have like an explanation as to why he is healed again. You know, possibly he's got a bit of that regeneration energy left from Series 9 or something like that. Who knows? Maybe it could be the whole story of the next time we see Davros as to why he's looking like this. But ultimately I do think it was the right decision to make, especially with it being aired on children in need. You know, if the whole message of this is we're seeing a lot of like disabled children that we're meant to be raising money for and to help, it would be a little bit insensitive to have Davros show up as a disabled villain in this children in need sketch. So it does definitely make sense for that. But I think the main reason people are annoyed is because Russell has basically hinted that this is how we're going to see him in the future as well, which, like I say, I personally am fine with. I think it's the right decision. It will just be interesting to see how they go about doing that in the future. And I think if this is genuinely something that you're worked up about, I think there's more important things to be worrying about, and you know, go outside and touch some grass. It's not that big of a deal. And like, I've seen some people trying to defend it, being like, I've never seen it as a wheelchair that Davros is in. I've seen it as a life support system. And like, to those people, I just want to say, like, what do you think the word disability means? Do you think it just means somebody in a wheelchair? Like, do you not understand how nuanced disability can be? Whether it's a wheelchair or a life support system, it doesn't change the fact that Davros is disabled. That's still the case either way. If somebody has to move around in a life support system, that's still a disability. It doesn't change anything. So yeah, if this is something you genuinely worked up about, this change that Russell T Davies has made, I don't know what to tell you. Go outside and touch some grass. Anyway, we then get the moment between Davros and Moan's character, where they're trying to use an anagram of Khaled to come up with a name for the Daleks, which I think was quite a funny joke, but it probably was my least favourite joke in this whole sketch, only because I feel like it went on for a tad too long. I did think it was quite funny to begin with, but the more names he just kept putting out there, I did think, okay, we could have probably finished with this joke a couple lines ago or something, but I still thought it was a pretty funny idea. Anyway, Davros is then called away by Nida, which I think was a really nice cameo.
Davros, I need your confirmation to begin the next bombardment, sir.
I heard it when I was watching it and I thought, is that meant to be Nida's voice? I was like, it sounds pretty similar, but I don't remember exactly how he sounds. But I've seen a lot of people talking about it afterwards and they clearly say it's meant to be Nida as well, which I thought was a nice cool cameo. I looked on TARDIS Wiki and it says that was Nick Briggs doing that impression, but there was no source for that particular bit of information, so I don't know how true that is. Anybody who knows for sure, let me know in the comments. But either way, I think it was a really good impression of Nida and a nice little cameo to have in there. But anyway, the music up to this point in the sketch I thought was quite good. I like the music when it's the scenes with Davros and Castavillian, and I like the initial motif that sounds like The Doctor Forever from what I remember, when the 14th Doctor crash lands and gets out of his TARDIS. Then the music really takes a bit of a turn immediately as it starts getting more into the comedic half of this sketch, and I really don't like the over-the-top clown music that's throughout the rest of this sketch. It sounds really bad, really obnoxious and over the top, and it's maybe like a little bit too loud as well. I think it could have just maybe done without any of the music or a little bit of a different track. Like, we know it's meant to be funny, we don't need this over-the-top clown-like music to tell us that, and like I said, it was just a little bit too obnoxious for me, but the music at the start of the sketch, like I said, was pretty good. And yeah, I think that comedy music playing throughout is basically the only thing I didn't really like about this sketch. But then of course we had David Tennant back as the Doctor, who for the rest of the sketch is playing against Moan Rizwan as Mr. Castavillian, who I think was really good in this. He did admit in Doctor Who Unleashed that he's only seen bits of Doctor Who on and off, but I think he had really good chemistry with David, and I think he was really good in this for what it was. And obviously David Tennant was great as the Doctor, as ever. He seemed a little bit more energetic and eccentric in this compared to how he normally is as the 10th Doctor, but I do think that was mostly just down to this being a Children in Need sketch, or also maybe a little bit of post-regeneration, because it does seem like he's going to be a lot more serious than this in the specials, with obviously still probably a few little comedic parts, especially with Donna. There's obviously a nice reference to Jodie's doctor in this as well.
60 minutes ago, I was this really brilliant woman.
And they also have Jodie's interior card in the TARDIS, which makes sense because he's still got that interior in Liberation of the Daleks. Interesting that we don't see an explanation as to how the new TARDIS interior comes about though, because I don't think we're going to see Jodie's interior during the 60th anniversary specials. Maybe we'll see like the interior card like this, like we did in here, but that does indicate to me that maybe we're going to see an explanation for the new TARDIS interior during the 60th anniversary specials, possibly during Wild Blue Yonder, because the TARDIS does seem to be going a little bit funny in that. But yeah, I also liked the joke of the Doctor accidentally naming the Daleks, especially as a little bit of payoff to that scene earlier on with Davros and Castavillian. The fact that he seems to coin the catchphrase exterminate for the Daleks as well, and also a cheeky little nod to Genesis of the Daleks as well, I thought was quite funny. And speaking of the Daleks, I think the Daleks look great in this. Having the Genesis of the Daleks era Dalek models with these modern HD cameras, I think they look really good. And although Russell has said that he does want to give the Daleks a bit of a rest in the new series, if they do come back in season 2 or series 15, whatever we're calling it, I would be happy with the Genesis era Daleks, or a new redesign that's kind of based on the Genesis era Daleks instead of the Time War Daleks. If they do ever come back, I think that would look really cool. And at the end of this sketch, we also got a little look at what Doctor Who Unleashed, which is basically the successor to Doctor Who Confidential. We got a little look as to what that's going to be like, which is basically just like Confidential, but with Stephen Powell as a host instead of having a narrator for every episode, who I quite liked in this. There was some moments where he was maybe a little bit awkward at attempts to make jokes and stuff like that, but he seemed like a really nice guy, and I think he's really good in this, really great host for the show. And as well, the logo for Doctor Who Unleashed, although none of us really liked it when we first saw it initially announced, and I'm still not the biggest fan of the logo, it does look a lot better in motion in what I assume to be basically the title sequence of Doctor Who Unleashed, although I assume there'll maybe be a bit more of an extended title sequence in the full show instead of just this 10-minute version. Overall, I quite liked the sketch for what it was, and if you think this is going to be like an indication of the new era going forward or something like that, you do have to understand this is just a Children in Need sketch that happened to be before the specials. Don't take it too seriously, don't be so up in arms about it, and if you're genuinely annoyed about the Davros change, just really think about it and, touch some grass. It's not that big of a deal. And I've recently talked about my thoughts on the Whoniverse and much more in my latest episode of my podcast, The Lone Companion, and if you want to watch that, I'll have that on screen now.